Welcome back to the Crash Course Podcast. My name is Craig Crash Collins, joined as always by Brandon Scott, otherwise known as B. Scott. We've got a lot to go into in tonight's podcast. We're going to talk some IndyCar, keeping that going, the theme of the month of May. We're going to talk about the GMR Grand Prix from this past weekend. We're going to talk about Indy 500 qualifying. We're also going to talk more Pacers, talk about their play-in game with the Charlotte Hornets, as well as getting into some MLB contenders and pretenders. A lot to get to on tonight's podcast, B. Scott.
Yeah, we definitely got a lot. Busy month before things start to really quiet down again.
Absolutely. It's really excited to get into it all. And let's go ahead and hop right into things here. Of course, the month of May is in full swing. We had the GMR Grand Prix this past weekend. You had Romain Grosjean on the pole and led the field to the green flag. Caution on the opening lap, though. It's the only caution of the race, as there is contact between Connor Daly and Simon Pagenaud. All that turn one, always an entertaining one. As you got to get down.
Never when I'm there, though. Never when I'm there.
Really?
Yeah. So I got to go to the NASCAR race, the Brickyard on the road course this year, maybe actually see it. But last year, back to back, the double header of the Harvest GP. Nope, they all made it through perfectly fine. So go figure. This year, I had an opportunity to go, and I took the kids to the zoo instead, and sure enough, it goes wild in turn one. I'm like, oh, come on.
Yeah.
One of these days.
Yeah, when we used to have tickets to the U.S. Grand Prix, that's where our seats were, is right on turn one, basically where our Brickyard seats were, like at the entrance to pit road. And so you got a good view of turn one when all the mayhem was happening. So, definitely always an interesting thing to watch everybody try to pile in. And I pretty much guarantee you that you will see something, when you go to the NASCAR race, because they're not going to pull any punches about going in there hot. So
well, and it'll be like one of their first times.
Right.
You remember, if you think about it, NASCAR doesn't do practice or qualifying right now.
True.
So they'll be going in there hot and not really knowing what to expect. So
right.
That's going to be very entertaining.
So it's gonna be fun. So an incident there, but like I said, that was the only real issue of the race. Grosjean did lead 44 of 85 laps. There were 8 lead changes among 5 drivers, but really, I mean, it was the battle, between Rinus Veekay and Romain Grosjean, really for a bulk of the race. Final pit stop, Scott Dixon takes the lead from Grosjean on lap 64. Dixon loses the lead to Rinus Veekay on the following lap. Veekay ends up winning the race. He leads 33 laps. Grosjean, Alex Palou, Joseph Newgarden, and Graham Rahal round out the top 5. So, pretty entertaining race. I mean, not a whole lot of, action up front. You had, like I said, Grosjean and Veekay leading, 77 of the 85 laps. But, always fun to kick off the month of May with the road course. And, we talked about it last week when we get a little bit of something different than what we're used to with Pagenaud and Will Power winning every other year at this event. And we did get that in this in Rinus Veekay taking home the checkered flag.
Yeah, I mean, and Scott Dixon won it last year. So
right.
But yeah, I was honestly I missed the end of the race because of some family stuff that I had to go to. But when I left, Grosjean was still winning, and my pick of Jack Harvey had just had some issues. So I was like, oh, darn, I was close. I thought my pick was going to come through. But I was really pulling for Grosjean at that point, just because he's such a cool story with what happened in Bahrain at the end of the F1 season last year. If you don't know, Google it, YouTube it. Basically, his car split in half going into a metal barrier, blew up. If you watch the Drive to Survive series on Netflix, he talks about it and literally said he came to terms with this is when he's going to die. So unbelievable story. Definitely check it out. But I thought it was a good race. And it's really interesting how some of these guys, their strategy really paid. Some of them paid off. Like Graham Rahal was furious with his team when they made him come in on lap 2 and then come back in on lap 3 to refuel. And they were like far, far behind the rest of the field. He's like, what are we doing? Why did we do this? This is ridiculous. This doesn't make any sense. And then to come out and finish in the top 5, obviously makes that move look a whole lot better. Joseph Newgarden, I don't really feel like Joseph Newgarden had a car to win it, but he was up there the entire day. He didn't get the podium. It would have been good for the championship standings for him if he would have been able to get that podium ahead of Alex Palou. But hey, consistency. He finished ahead of Dixon. That's a big thing. It's like, as Dixon knows, it's a marathon, not a sprint. But I think one of the things that we learned the most this weekend was that Alex Palou's here to stay. He's not going anywhere. He is a contender for this championship this season. And people really need to start paying attention to him more than we already have.
Yeah, and I think our buddy Nick Yeoman put it pretty well too. He was talking about how we basically have had a youth movement through this first few weeks of the IndyCar season. With you have Palou, you have Veekay.
You can even say that.
Yeah.
You can even say that they're all kids.
Yeah, they are. We're all under the age of like 21 or 22 or something like that.
They're all under the age of 27.
27. Well, because I was like, isn't Veekay's 20, right?
Believe so.
Yeah.
I know they're like 21, 24.
But still, though, I mean,
Oh, never mind. I'm thinking of the rookies. Because, Chase McLaughlin's 27. Yeah, they are all like under the age of 20, or at least under the age of 22. So
yeah. So I mean, we talked about it a little bit
here in America.
We talked about how they, which that's got to be a drag, right? Especially if like the drinking age is a little bit lower, where they're like, oh, okay, well, we won the race, but we can't celebrate legally because it's
here is the non-alcoholic champagne. Here's the sparkling grape juice for you and to celebrate with.
Right. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of what we talked about, for our IndyCar preview, where we talked about how there's all these young drivers that are, we're kind of seeing. I don't want to really call it a changing of the guard yet, but maybe it's time that we call it that. As far as seeing, some of these newer drivers start to take shape and take over for, the drivers that we've kind of, gotten used to over the years with the Dixons and the Will Powers. I mean, obviously Dixon's still around and very competitive.
Dixon's going to be like 76 years old and going for his 25th championship at the time.
Right.
And still just driving the wheels off a car. So.
But yeah, it's pretty incredible that and I think if we had all different winners in like all 5 or 6 races so far, so that's pretty cool as well.
Yeah, and 4 first-time winners.
Right.
That's even more unbelievable. So. Hey, the only multiple-time winners that have won so far are Colton Herta and Scott Dixon.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we've had first-time winners.
Yeah, so pretty incredible, and gives you a lot of excitement, going into now the preparation for the Indy 500, which is what we're going to go ahead and get into here. The first practice is going to be tomorrow if you're watching this live, or today if you're watching us on the YouTube channel. We're listening in on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or Spotify, wherever podcasts can be heard. I can't say one part of that without the other part of that. And then then qualifying gets set this weekend for the Indy 500, and we'll know by the end of this weekend who's going to be on the pole for this year's Indianapolis 500. And so now let's go ahead and get into our prediction for who's going to lead the field to the, is it 104th or 105th?
105th.
105th. That's right, because 2016 was the 100th, so 5 and then 21. Okay, there we go. So the 105th running. I was tripping myself up because I saw something about 104th the other day, but that's because it was like something about Sato, so that's why it was throwing me off. But who's going to lead the field to the 105th running of the Indianapolis 500? And you know what? We talked about him. You talked about him being here to stay. I'm going to go with Alex Palou. He qualified in the Fast Six in 4 of the 5 races this season. He had a front row start in both Texas races. Had the pole for the Genesis 300, which was the only oval on the year, and then last year he qualified 7th for the Indy 500. So he definitely knows how to get it done on ovals. He knows how to start near the front at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and he seems to have pretty much all the momentum going kind of in his direction as we get into the preparation for the 105th running.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good pick. This is a tough time to be able to pick these things because, they haven't run on the oval yet.
Makes it that much more interesting.
I guess so, yeah. I don't know. You can never rule out Ed Carpenter.
True.
For some reason, I don't know. I kind of want to go. I think the easy pick would be to go with an Andretti car, just because they always seem to have the practice speed and the qualifying speed. Scott Dixon is a strong possibility as always. I'm just going to go completely out of like left field here with this pick and kind of go with an Ed Carpenter car. But I'm going to go because remember, Rinus Veekay actually had the pole last year for the Indy 500. And so they always have the good speed. I'm going to say Connor Daly. He's run very well at the 500 these past few years, whether it was with Andretti or last year with Ed Carpenter Racing. But I kind of feel like, he's matured a lot more and he's figured out this track more. And, it's not something that you're just going to conquer from day one. I mean, not everybody's Alexander Rossi or Elio Castroneves. I kind of feel like Connor Daly, he's shaving the mullet, getting rid of the mullet. He said the mullet's bringing him bad luck. So maybe the shaving of the mullet is going to bring him some good luck and he's going to land the pole. I would love to see that. Like I said, it's so hard to say without having seen any practice numbers to this point. Obviously, we're recording this on Monday night. First day of Indy 500 practice is tomorrow. So it's a little tough. I love your pick of Alex Palou, but I'm going to go Connor Daly as my main pick. And then my safe pick is going to be Scott Dixon.
Well, I mean, hey, if he got rid of the mullet, that technically makes him more aerodynamic, right? So, I mean, it should be fine. Like, he should be...
I don't know. I mean, there's something to be said about a mullet.
True. So, yeah, and honestly, I mean, good picks. I mean, it's funny, too, because, yeah, you would like to have those, couple of practice sessions in the books to kind of know a little bit better. But I mean, it's always kind of a mixed bag because, I mean, yeah, they'll be running qualifying speeds, but you'll never really know until that day, what's actually going to happen. I mean, it'll be very entertaining to watch, and we're excited to see. And of course, next week we'll be talking about who, got that pole position. We'll be talking about, who's going to be leading the field to the green flag, and we'll be getting you ready for the Indy 500. So very exciting time of the year in the state of Indiana. So it's even more exciting because what the Pacers are going to be doing also tomorrow. But before we get to that, let's go ahead and hear from our friends of the show.
Are you tired of your same old lunch hour of sitting and scrolling through your apps on your smartphone? Have you thought about playing a board game with your coworkers? Eat Lunch and Board Game is a podcast dedicated to telling you about board games that are great for lunchtime fun and some that are probably better saved for after work hours. I've been playing games at my office for over 4 years now where I have made new friends and business connections that have been very useful. Board games build bridges.
The Crash Course Podcast is brought to you by Anchor. Looking to start a podcast but don't know where to start? Look no further than Anchor.fm. Anchor allows you to record and edit your podcast right from your computer or mobile device and will distribute it to other sites such as Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify. On a budget, not only is Anchor completely free of charge, but will allow you to make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. Download the free Anchor app or go to Anchor.fm to get started. Anchor, it's everything you need in a podcast in one place. Just a reminder, you can go like us on Facebook, Crash Course Podcast. You can go over to Twitter, follow us at Crash Course FM. Make sure you go over to the YouTube channel. I was just telling B. Scott before we went live, last week's podcast is our #1 video on the YouTube channel. So thank you guys all for going over there, throwing the love, throwing the support. Very exciting. Very happy with the performance on that one. So if you haven't checked it out, go check that out, because also you can go over there and find the MCT podcast, which is our YouTube exclusive podcast, where they talked about some NBA stuff as well with Russell Westbrook and his triple-double, just going off and setting the triple-double record. So a lot of good content there, so go over there, check that out, subscribe if you guys want to, and remember you can hear us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, wherever podcasts can be heard. You can hear the Crash Course Podcast. Also, tune into our live recording on Monday nights, where you at 8 o'clock, where you can hear, where you can contribute to the conversation. You can hear us talk about the stuff, for that week's podcast in real time. Twitch.tv/3C Media. So let's talk about the Indiana Pacers. Last week, of course, talking about all the locker room drama. B. Scott, I know you were hoping that we wouldn't be talking about this topic this week.
Not only are we talking about it, but we got the 9 seed.
Right. So, I mean...
And for all you Pacers fans out there that are saying, well, come on, don't we want them to make the playoffs? Not this year.
No,
we don't.
We
need to rebuild. We need some help. And guess what? Getting in the lottery would be a great way for that to happen. But no, we had to go out and prove the national media wrong, that we weren't a circus.
Go out there and...
I wanted to say something else, but this is a PG show.
True, very true. Well, let's take a look back at the Pacers season. They do finish 34-38, 9th in the Eastern Conference. It's the first time finishing under 500 since the 2014-15 season. TJ Warren played the first 4 games of the year, but he missed the rest of the season due to injury. We kind of found out later that it was because he kind of wanted to not play for the current head coach of the Indiana Pacers. The Pacers traded Victor Oladipo on January 16th. At the time, the Pacers' record was 8-4. They did acquire Caris LeVert, who was sidelined until March after a small mass was found on his kidney. Oladipo was then traded from the Rockets in late March to the Miami Heat. Then talking about Caris LeVert, he debuts on March 13th. The team record had dipped to 16-20, so if you kind of look at that, they finished the season 4 games under 500, and at that point, after not having Warren, not having Oladipo because of the trade, not having LeVert because he was sidelined due to injury, the Pacers dipped 4 games under 500, so the rest of the way they were 500 at least, playing 500 basketball the rest of the way. In LeVert's debut, he had 13.7 rebounds and a win over the Suns. On the season, he averaged 21 points, 5 rebounds, and 5 assists. And then Domantas Sabonis, Pacers All-Star representative, skill challenge winner. So he was one of the bright spots on the year for the Indiana Pacers, as he often is. So, reaction to the season, I mean, man, this is easily the most chaotic season that I can think of for the Indiana Pacers. I can't think of a year. I mean, is it out of the question? I mean, obviously for different circumstances, but is it out of the question to say that this is the most chaotic season since maybe the Malice of the Palace season? As far as just from a distraction standpoint, at least, just with all the different moving parts?
I would say so, mostly because the Malice at the Palace was one incident, and it just disrupted the rest of the season because of players not being available. I think this one's the most disruptive, knowing what's going on behind the scenes. There wasn't much going on behind the scenes that was, that we didn't know about after the Malice at the Palace. It was what it was. We all knew what it was.
Right.
And with this, at least then, okay, okay, you got to get rid of Ron Artest. You know, a little bit of changes here and there. The Pacers were a very talented team. I mean, if not for the malice at the Palace, that team probably would have won the championship that year. It was a very strong possibility. I mean, that was a legitimate championship team that got derailed. This year's team was not. So I think this is probably a bigger deal because this potentially now is going to cause a top to bottom house cleaning. And the Malice at the Palace didn't do that, really. There wasn't a top to bottom house cleaning. It was, I mean, yeah, I think they brought in a new I think Rick Carlisle was still around.
Yeah, I think Carlisle maintained his job. I don't know.
So it wasn't anything he could have prevented.
No.
He tried. But, you know, they shipped out some players, and I think it put a damper on the end of Reggie's career, to be honest.
Right.
That's about it for that. I mean, that's a big deal, but and it's a big deal that derailed a championship caliber team. I feel like this year is a worse situation just because of how toxic the behind the scenes has become. You know, it wasn't a toxic environment during the Malice at the Palace team with the team. That team was they liked each other. They liked playing for each other. They liked playing for Coach Carlisle. That's the big reason why it all unfolded the way it did, was because they all liked each other. It was a really good team chemistry wise. They just had, you know, some big personalities,
right?
I guess. But this one is a toxic situation behind the scenes that could really, really, really affect the Pacers for years to come. Because the Pacers aren't one of those teams that go into a rebuild. Last time they did it was after the Malice at the Palace, technically, and you know, we ended up with a horrible coach, and our best players were Danny Granger and Tyler Hansbrough. You know,
yeah.
So,
well, and I just mean from a just from a chaos standpoint, as far, you know, that's what I mean more or less with, you know, I can't think of another season where, because usually when the Pacers are bad like they were this year, it's just they're bad. There's not like a toxic, you know, mentality like you're saying. But, you know, I do think that it is impressive that they still churned out a playoff berth. I mean, say what you will about being in the play-in tournament. It's technically, you know, we can have a debate about that, just like making the wild card game of Major League Baseball. Did you technically make the playoffs, or did you?
Or did you just ruin your chances of getting
right. Well, and yeah, I think in both instances, I don't think you count, you know, winning as you won a playoff series, but you know, you count yourself as a playoff team because you were one of the teams.
You don't count it as a playoff series, no
right.
way.
Well, that's what I'm saying, because like, you know, they'll bust out, like in baseball, they'll bust out the champagne and the shirts for winning, you know, the wild card game, and it's like, well, I mean, you won the wild card game, now you gotta go.
Congratulations, you won one game.
Exactly. So, but yeah, I mean, you know, to still be able to make the playoffs, still be able to be around 500 and not be a complete dumpster fire. Because think about what it means. We talked about it a little bit last week. Think about what it means in a sport like the NBA that is very player-driven. I mean, almost entirely player-driven. Well, you know, you lose the locker room, you think, okay, that team's going to go. I mean, they were 16-20 when Karis LeVert, you know, came back. And I mean, that's well into the season. I don't think this was an issue that cropped up halfway through the season. I think this was a cultural issue that started with game one on the campaign. No,
because they came out of the gate really, really hot. Because I remember because they were like 3-0, and everybody was singing Nate Bjorkgren's praises and saying he is such a forward thinker. His offense is one that we love to play in.
But remember, TJ Warren like won it out as soon as that hire was made, and
right, but he wasn't playing already.
But what I'm saying.
But it's interesting that like Domantas Sabonis and Malcolm Brogdon came out singing his praises, and the Pacers came out of the gate red hot, and it was like, okay, maybe this team has a shot at something, and then the floor just came out.
Yeah,
I think. I mean, it was like early on in the marriage, and he was still. They were in the honeymoon phase at that point, and then everything got real.
Yeah.
to be honest. And, the real Nate Yorkin decided to finally stand up.
Yeah. So, yeah, but I mean, I'm just saying in general, I mean, you would think, especially, after trading Oladipo, you trade Oladipo, TJ Warren's out for the year, your coach is, a wreck. You wouldn't expect that team to still make the playoffs, and the Pacers did, which I think is impressive.
Right. Yeah. And you also got to think about, look, the Pacers are in the play-in tournament. And if it wasn't for the play-in, I mean, you're still seeing in the play-in tournament the defending champ LA Lakers and the Golden State Warriors. So, it's not like it's a bad thing, even though those two teams would have been in the playoffs, whereas
Pacers
would not have been in the playoffs. So it is what it is. Can we all just agree that we do not want the Pacers to win this game? Do not. It would not be a good thing for the Pacers to actually make the playoffs and have to play in a playoff series. It would not be a good thing at all. So, because I think they're still eligible for the lottery if they lose the play-in tournament.
Really? I don't know anything.
I think they are.
I don't know anything about the lottery or anything like that, or much about it. I'm always lost when it comes to what determines what.
I know they're not too far removed from being being slotted in the 10th pick. So it could happen.
Yeah,
let's hope.
Yeah, it could, and you talk about being in that play-in tournament, and the fact that you talked about it a little bit earlier that you didn't want to see the Pacers in it because they would get a better draft pick, and that's kind of the next question. Should Pacers fans be excited about this play-in tournament berth? I mean, if you wanna come at it from what I was saying earlier, impressive that they still were able to do it despite all the off the court distractions, maybe. But for me, no, I'm not super excited about the game, tonight's game. If you're listening to it tomorrow's game, if you're watching the stream, I'm not very optimistic about what's going to happen. I mean, the Pacers haven't won a playoff game since 2018. They've been in the playoffs, the last few years. They haven't missed the playoffs in a while, but they haven't won a playoff game since 2018. They haven't advanced out of the first round since 2014. They are 3-16 over that span. They are 2-7 versus all the play-in teams. They are 1-2 versus the Celtics. They are 0-3 versus the Wizards, and they are 1-2 against the Hornets. And then you think, well, I mean, maybe it's going to be at home at least. Yeah, the Pacers are 13-23 at Bankers Life this season. Obviously, home court advantage a little different this year because of all the COVID restrictions. And normally I would be picking a team like the Pacers to do it just because, hey, I mean, when all the odds seem down and the deck's kind of stacked against you, not really stacked against you, that's kind of a wrong metaphor to use, but when your back's up against the wall, I mean, and you got nothing else to lose, I mean, that's usually the teams that are the most dangerous when it comes to one-off games. But I mean, the Pacers season has been so unpredictable, and the locker room situation doesn't leave me with a whole lot of optimism going into the game against the Hornets.
Yeah, it doesn't leave me with a whole lot of optimism either. And like I said, this needs to be a must-lose game for the Pacers because this season just needs to come to an end.
Yeah,
it just needs to be done. Let's get it behind us. Let's move forward. Find a new coach, Brad Stevens, and just start building this thing back to what it can be. Because there are pieces in place. They don't need to gut the entire thing. They just need to figure out leadership. The players are there. The players are in place. I mean, look, the players did this themselves. They got to this point themselves, with or without that coach. So,
yeah. I mean,
we need to find better leadership.
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking at, we'll talk about it a little bit, most likely, hopefully, fingers crossed, next week when we kind of to do a little Pacers offseason preview.
If we are having to preview a Pacers versus Nets series or 76ers series,
hey,
something went horribly wrong.
They did beat the Sixers, remember that. So, I mean...
All they had to do was lose to the Sixers.
Right.
Philadelphia, what were you doing? You even brought Joel Embiid back in that game. Come on. Come on.
But, I mean, they they run it back. They can basically run it back next year. There's only a few, minus obviously, hopefully the head coach, but they can run it back essentially. There's only a few role players that would need that are going to have their.
They got to bring back one of those.
Well, right, but I'm just saying that
they have to bring back T.J. McConnell. He is a must.
But I'm just saying, it's not like Warren's gone. It's not like Levert's gone. It's not like Sabonis is gone.
Unless they bring back Yorkren, then TJ.
Oh yeah, for sure. Well, and so if when they run it back next year, they're going to have a healthy TJ Warren. They're going to have a healthy Karis LeVert for the whole season. Hopefully, Brogdon played well, this season. So you bring back a lot of good pieces, and if you add a piece or two more and get a new head coach in there, I think the optimism is back on the table, and you're back to being excited about what this team can do.
Yeah, like you said, it's not a bunch of scrubs out there playing basketball. This is a good team, and it's just crappy leadership looking over it right now, and that needs to change. If that changes and you get the right person in place, sky's the limit for this team, I believe. I feel like they have a really strong chance. Got a healthy LeVert, healthy TJ Warren. Who knows what you can do with Miles Turner if you're going to bring him back, or if you're going to trade him for somebody. There's endless possibilities here, so it'll be interesting. I think this will probably be one of the most interesting Pacers off seasons in recent history. Last year there was just a lot of drama going with, is Victor Oladipo going to be traded? Is Miles Turner going to be traded? Well, Miles Turner's always in trade conversations, and then they fired Nate McMillan. I feel like this year it's going to be clear cut. Fire Nate Bjorkgren. Bring in somebody that is going to be really good. Not Mark D'Antoni. Please, not Mark D'Antoni. Brad Stevens. I'm just saying, the match made in heaven right there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I feel like this Pacers offseason is going to be an exciting one and is really going to determine the future for this organization. If they run it back even with Bjorkgren, what's the point?
Right.
What's the point? That would be the most Pacers thing to do, right there. What problems? What are you talking about?
I'm sure it'll be fine.
We'll be good. Everything's fine. It's the meme of the little girl standing in front of the house burning down, and she's got that look on her face like, everything's fine.
Yeah.
That's it right there.
Right.
That's the Pacers.
Looking at our prediction for the play-in game, or for the play-in tournament for the Pacers, I think that the Hornets win. This play-in game. For me, I look back at April 2nd. The Pacers lost 114 to 97.
Yeah. I was looking at the show notes here, and you had 114 to 19. I was like,
yeah. I don't know what I was trying to write there.
No mercy rule in the NBA.
Yeah, exactly. Miles Bridges had 23 points. Cody Zeller had 17 off the bench. Obviously having a good bench is awesome, but we saw what a deep Miami team did to this very same Pacers team last year in the postseason when they were bringing guys off of the bench. And then it was the only matchup against Charlotte featuring Karis LeVert. He had 16 points, 5 assists. Sabonis and Turner both combined, for 15 points, and Brogdon did not play. So, you could say, oh, well, they have Brogdon this time, but I don't think that's going to be enough to really do anything. I think, and the Hornets, for whatever reason, have always kind of been a thorn in the side of the Pacers, no matter how good the Pacers have been. So, and no matter how bad the Hornets have been, especially back when they had Kemba Walker, it always seemed like the Hornets were just a tough matchup for the Pacers. So, I think Charlotte wins this game. I don't have a whole lot of faith in the Pacers to win it, so I'm going with the Hornets.
Yeah, I'm going with the Hornets as well, just because they have a bright future right now, and this would be the next big step for them to actually, continue that outlook for themselves. I think they're playing for more than the Pacers are at this point. And that makes them a little bit more dangerous. So, and they're a little bit more athletic, I feel like, than the Pacers, and that's going to hurt the Pacers ultimately. So I got the Hornets as well.
So looking at the rest of the play-in tournament, you have the 7-seeded Celtics against the 8-seeded Wizards. And then, of course, in the West, in a couple of nights, you have the Lakers and the Warriors, as well as the Grizzlies and the Spurs. So our predictions for the rest of the play-in tournament, for the East, I have the Wizards beating the Celtics. The Celtics are 2-6 in May. They've lost 10 of their last 15. The Wizards have won 4 of their last 6. The Wizards are kind of flying high at the moment. So I do think the Wizards beat the Celtics to advance and become the 7 seed. And then, like I said, had the Hornets over the Pacers, the 10 over the 9 there. And then I think Celtics versus Hornets. The Celtics are a team where I'm just like, I can't imagine them not being in the playoffs. I can't imagine Brad Stevens not leading this team into the playoffs. I know that right now they're trending in the wrong direction, but I do think for one game, because like that's the beauty and that's the great thing about the play-in tournament is that it's basically you play back-to-back game 7s, basically if you can get a win. And so in a game 7, I still take the Celtics roster. I still take Brad Stevens over anything that the Hornets could possibly throw out there. So I have the Wizards clinching the 7 seed and the Celtics clinching the 8 seed. And then over in the West, the West is tough, man. I really first of all, I'll start with the Spurs and the Grizzlies because I'm just gonna go with Greg Popovich. I'm just gonna go Spurs there. I think it's a toss-up. As much as I'd like to say, John Morant, young Grizzlies team, they can get it done. I'm just going to go with 2 people that you don't really want to... For my first round, or for my first, play-in game picks, I'm going to go with 2 people you don't bet against, and that's LeBron James and Greg Popovich. So I'm going, Greg Popovich and the Spurs to beat the Grizzlies, and then I'm going to go... that Lakers-Warriors game is going to be so fun to watch. And I think that LeBron is so mad that he has to play in this play-in tournament that he's gonna he's gonna will his team to win. Again, like I said, I just can't imagine LeBron getting bounced in the first round of this play-in tournament. So that sets up the Lakers and Spurs in the second play-in game, and I think LeBron. LeBron would be the 7th seed, so they'd be locked in. It'd be the Spurs versus the Warriors, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
So, actually, you know what? So, I'm going to go with Steph and the Warriors. So, I'm going to go with basically remaining chalk in the Western Conference. I think LeBron and company beat the Warriors, advance to the 7th seed, and I think between the Spurs and the Warriors, I think the Warriors win and clinch the 8th seed. So, that kind of stands pat over in the West.
So for me, I do have the Wizards over the Celtics as well. Wizards are playing really well, mostly because Russell Westbrook has found his old self and is playing like an MVP again. I'm not as sold on the Celtics as you are because their roster is a little hurt right now. Jaylen Brown is out and will not be playing, and that is a big, big loss for the Celtics. So I got the Wizards clinching the 7th seed. I do have, like I said, I have the Hornets over the Pacers, and then I'm going to have the Hornets over the Celtics because the loss of Jaylen Brown that's a big one for the Celtics. And otherwise, if Jaylen Brown was healthy, I would go with the Celtics there. But I got the Hornets going in at the 8. In the West, I have the Lakers beating the Warriors as well. LeBron has come back. He came back against the Pacers, and he looked really good. He's a man on a mission. Obviously, it's playoff time. This is when LeBron turns it on. So they're clinching the 7, and then I'm going to have the Grizzlies beating the Spurs. No reason why. It's just Jay Morant, I guess. I'll go with that. And then I'm going to have the Warriors beating the Grizzlies to get in as the 8 seed. I just feel like even LeBron has said this. Steph is playing it should be the MVP this year. He's playing at an MVP caliber level, and nobody is really going to want to play him. Obviously, it's going to be tough for him to beat the Lakers, I feel like, but he can definitely beat the Spurs or the Grizzlies to get into the actual playoffs.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm excited for these next couple of nights of NBA basketball because it's going to be, like I said, Game 7s galore. I don't care what LeBron says. I think this was a great addition, especially, I mean, you already have half the league making the playoffs anyway, over half the league making the playoffs anyway. You might as well add more teams and say, let's do this crazy play-in tournament. I like the idea, so very excited to watch some NBA basketball over these next couple weeks. And, of course, we're going to have our NBA playoff preview, even though technically it'll be like a day or two into the playoffs. But we do that every year, so, it's fine. All right. And then let's go ahead and get into our final segment here. And that is going to be going over some Major League Baseball. We've pushed this off. We finally got to talk about this on the podcast. We had this set.
Well, because there hasn't been like any breaking news or anything.
Right. So, yeah, we had this pegged for last week, and then, of course, Eric Fisher signed, so we wanted to push it back another week. But we're going to go Major League Baseball contenders and pretenders, tell you what teams that are currently in the playoffs and a couple that are out are they contending, are they pretending? So if the MLB playoffs started today, the American League playoffs, you would have the best team in the American League, the Chicago White Sox, playing the winner of the wild card game between the Astros and Blue Jays. And then you'd have the 2-3 matchup of the Red Sox and the A's. Then in the National League, you would have the top seed in the NL, the San Francisco Giants, the team that everybody thought would be at the top of the National League going into the season. They would play the winner of the wild card game, the Padres and the Dodgers. So a lot of NL West action going on there. And then the 2-3 matchup would be the Cardinals and the Mets. So in hot or cold style, we are going to do contender or pretender. I've got 5 teams, 3 that are currently in the playoff picture that we didn't expect. Because, I mean, some of the teams that are there, the White Sox, the Astros, the A's, all those teams, we expected them to be there. But there's some teams in the AL and in the NL that we didn't expect to be there. So we're going to give you 5 teams, a few that are currently in the playoff picture that we didn't expect to see, and some teams that are out of the playoff picture that we did expect to see there. Tell you if they are contenders or pretenders. So we're going to start, B. Scott, with your Boston Red Sox. Current
surprise team.
Yeah, current AL East leading Boston Red Sox.
It's up near the top of the AL standings in general.
Right. I mean, they're the 2 seed. They'd be hosting the A's if that playoff series. And that was, they just got done playing the A's, didn't they? Like last week.
Yeah.
So
they lost the series, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, but I mean, the Red Sox have been a very surprise, and also, I mean, keep in mind they got swept by the Orioles to start the season, and then ever since then they have been just running roughshod throughout the rest of the American League, which has been pretty fun to watch. But for me, I know you're not going to like it, B. Scott, but I have them down as a pretender. They've only got 2 series wins against teams above 500. One of those was a 2-game sweep over the Mets. Which the Mets are technically over 500, but the NL East right now is just, anybody's game. They're all playing kind of sloppy baseball right now. And we'll see what the Red Sox have in the month of June coming up, because they have 2 series against the Astros and Yankees, 1 against the Blue Jays and Rays. And so a good June will set the tone for what kind of year they have. If they have, a month where they, are above 500, have, a good month of June, then heck, I think that they're a pretty safe bet to make the playoffs. But if the wheels come off in the month of June, then I still think they have enough fight. I mean, they can still maybe be better than the Astros to still make the playoffs, because I don't think there's going to be 2 teams from the AL Central, especially with the way the Twins are playing. So I think that they can still maybe make the playoffs. But as far as, being in the AL East, championship run, I think that's going to be kind of tough if they have a bad June. So I have them as a pretender for now, but if they go and have a great June, then I think they're off for a very good year.
I'm actually going to have them as a contender, not for the World Series or anything, but for the AL East, because I look at what the rest of the AL East is, and they just haven't found their footing. And the Red Sox just keep plugging away. They're not you said they're running roughshod. I don't believe they're running roughshod, because I feel like any given game they could blow a huge lead or get completely blown out. And but they're playing consistent right now, and that's a huge step up from where they were last year. The offense is playing a lot better, and I think because of this, you are now hearing talk of Chris Sale returning at some point this summer. And if Chris Sale returns at some point this summer, that's a huge, huge boost to a rotation that is a little shaky. And if they get to July and they're still in contention, the Red Sox could end up being buyers at the deadline. We were talking about this off air. Some people are talking as if the Nationals fall out of it, Max Scherzer could be in play for the Red Sox. Like you even said, like, well, a couple prospects and like I was saying, right now it looks like a couple prospects and or a couple major league ready players. You mentioned Michael Chavis as a player to be thrown in there. I mentioned Jay Groom. I did say that the only two players that were off limits from the farm system are Tristan Casas and Bobby Dahlbeck. Those are the only two. I feel like as of right now for the Red Sox, everybody else is fair game. Another name that came up was, I think it's Danny Duffy.
Yeah, from the Royals.
For the Royals. That's another name that has been popped around for the Red Sox. But I just feel like their offense is playing really well. And it's kind of surprising that their defense is playing as well as it is too, especially when you lose Benintendi. That's a loss. And then the biggest one is Jackie Bradley Jr. Obviously, he may not have been great offensively, but defensively he was a key cog out there roaming center field. But you're getting some good surprises out of players like Alex Verdugo. JD Martinez is playing back to the level that everybody expects to see from JD Martinez. So yeah, I got this team as contenders just because when you think the Yankees have figured it out, then they stumble again. They're just hanging right around 500 and can't seem to get over the hump. It seems like that's the way it is with most of the AL East. So until somebody else in the AL East can make a move, I'm going to have the Red Sox as contenders.
Yeah, we see, these next, we're going to talk about a couple more AL East teams. They all play each other, coming up in June. So I think June will be the month. That's the
thing. The Red Sox have not had to play the AL East very much.
Right.
Other than the
Orioles. Yeah. They played the Orioles, I think, three times, maybe?
Yeah. Yeah, it's been a lot.
But yeah, so it'll I think, like I said, month of June is going to be key. We're going to talk about more AL East teams. So moving on to the Blue Jays. I have them as a contender. They're basically, in my opinion, a better version of the Red Sox in terms of I believe in their bats a little bit more, and their pitching. The Blue Jays are not only missing some guys on their pitching staff on the IL, but they also are a team that's relied heavily on their bullpen, which obviously, come the dog days, it's going to really come and bite them unless they can find some help. But, this is a team that just, is so stacked on the offensive side of the baseball that they have been able to just have a fantastic season so far. They have more quality wins so far in the season. And they've had the main bulk of their success has been without George Springer. So, you talk about they, go out and make some big moves acquiring, George Springer in the offseason, and they've had all their success so far without him, and they're still in the playoff picture. This is a team that, at the beginning of the year, we talked, are they going to actually be in the playoff chase like everybody thought they would be? And right now they are right in the thick of things. Vlad Jr.'s playing out of his mind right now. You've got...
Speaking of him, did you see the video of him mimicking one of the pictures?
Yeah,
that was hilarious.
I saw that on TikTok today. That was really funny. I enjoyed that. But yeah, I mean, you've got him, you've got, Marcus Semien, who's playing well. That was another offseason acquisition that they had. So this Blue Jays team, I just have a little bit more faith in this Blue Jays team than I do the Red Sox. And so that's why I'm saying that the Blue Jays are a contender. And some of it may also be residual from the fact that I wanted to have the Blue Jays when we did our preview special. I wanted to have the Blue Jays in the playoffs, and then I talked myself out of it, and now I'm like, dang, I should have stayed with that.
Yeah, I'm going to say the Blue Jays are contenders as well, because you do need two contenders in a division, I feel like. And if there is anybody that can seem to figure it out, I feel like this year it is the Blue Jays. So, yeah, I got them as contenders. They're young. I feel like they've been building up to this moment, and when you have a team that's been building up to a moment like this, they're eventually going to get over the hump. And I feel like the Blue Jays have that. They have the potential to do that. I have more faith in the Blue Jays than I do anybody else in the AL East, other than the Red Sox.
Well,
the Red Sox and the Blue Jays, I'm riding with both of them from the AL East.
And that's who we're going to talk about next. You said anybody else in the AL East. The other main contender right now in the AL East would be the New York Yankees, who I have as a contender. Just like the Red Sox, we won't talk about it too much more. I promise I won't say it about 18 more times. But the month of June is going to be big for the AL East. And the Yankees are right in the thick of things. They have 2 series against the Red Sox, which will be key in them making ground on the Red Sox. And then they also have, the Yankees' schedule so far this year has been pretty tough. They've had to play these Blue Jays a few times. They came off a series against the Nationals, who, I think the Nationals aren't really at 500 right now either. They still had to face, I think, Patrick Corbin and Max Scherzer that series. They've had to face, a lot tougher opponents than I think the Red Sox have, and that gets a little bit lighter in the month of June when they play the Twins, Royals, and Angels, so they can make up a little bit of that ground that they may have lost on the Red Sox in that month. I have more faith in what the Yankees have. They have that great bullpen. They have Garrett Cole. They have a pitching staff that I don't think has reached their full potential. And then they have all the offensive talent. They've got COVID's not doing them any favors right now, as they have a few players out, due to COVID protocols and that kind of thing. But if that lineup can get back in full force, I think I wouldn't really bet against them. So yeah, I think Yankees as contenders, at the moment.
Yeah, I just don't have the faith in the Yankees right now. I just feel like if they have a few more rough weeks, they're really going to push it. They're really going to try to push it hard. And when you got their batters, when they try to push it, they strike out more. A lot of their batters are hit a home run or nothing at all. It feels like that power is either that lineup's either hitting for power or they're striking out. And I feel like when things start getting a little bit more desperate for them and they're needing to really win, and that's when they kind of get sloppy. And I feel like that's potentially where this lineup is heading. There's I don't know. I just don't have that. I don't have a good feel about them. So I'm going with pretender for the Yankees. Obviously, for baseball, it's always good when the Yankees are contenders, just to be honest.
Yeah.
It's good when the Yankees and Red Sox are both contenders, and their series against each other throughout the season are very entertaining. So.
Well, regardless, it's going to be a big storyline. This is a Yankees team that had World Series aspirations. I know in our preview show, I had, my World Series prediction was Padres versus the Yankees. So, I think, this is a team that, feels like it should be. It feels like the Dodgers pre-2020, where they're like, why, we've got all these tools, why are we not winning a World Series? And so that's what it feels like with the Yankees right now. So I can only imagine what the storylines would be and what the outcome of the season would be should they, not be in contention. Now let's switch over to the National League. First starting with the Giants, who are your best team in the National League right now.
Never figured that team out.
No.
What makes them one year be horrible, and the next year they're like, oh, World Series champs.
Right. So I really wanted to say contender here. I really wanted to say that the San Francisco Giants are contenders. 2017 was the last time that any division in baseball, had 3 teams in the postseason, which that year was also the NL West. You had Nolan Arenado and Trevor Story on the Rockies. You had Paul Goldschmidt on the Diamondbacks. I mean, this was, a crazy NL West at the time. But again, I just still have more faith in the Dodgers and the Padres to overtake them in the NL West. And then when it comes to making the playoffs, I mean, there's other teams behind them with better rosters, a little bit more stability, that I have a little bit more faith in that are behind them. As far as, I still think, I think the Mets and the Nationals are still 2 teams that are going to be contenders when it's all said and done as far as, getting into the playoffs. I think, excuse me, I think the NL Central is going to be a 1-team, playoff, contributor. I don't think that there's anybody else from that division, but I mean, you talk about the NL East, the Phillies, the Mets, the Nationals, the Braves, NL West, you have the Padres and the Dodgers. Just the Giants have been playing well. I mean, you have the resurgence of Buster Posey, who's hitting like he's playing, 9 years ago, like prime Buster Posey right now. But I mean, the bullpen, it's kind of Red Sox light. Like, they're playing unbelievable baseball right now, but they just don't have the roster that I'm like, yeah, they're going to take it the rest of the way. I mean, Kevin Gossman's pitching well. Anthony DeSclafani's pitching well. We'll see if that holds up. Their bullpen's a little shaky. And they've got pretty much, it seems like the players that they have on their team have been there for forever. And Brandon Belt, Brandon Crawford, Buster Posey, all those guys. So I think they're going to be a fun storyline. And another thing that kind of makes me think they might fizzle out is that's what we've seen, I feel like, over the last few years. They have a fantastic month or 2. Usually it's towards the middle or the end of the season. And then they kind of just fall off. And so I think that's what's going to happen here. I want to say they're contenders. I really do. But I just don't have faith that they're going to be able to keep this up.
So I believe they're pretenders for the division, but contenders to make a push for the playoffs, at least for the wild card game. Like you said, don't really count that as making the playoffs. But I don't think they can hold up against the Dodgers or the Padres. That's going to be a tough ask of anybody. So yeah, I'm going to say they're technically pretenders. I don't see them holding up throughout the rest of the season, especially with the other teams in their division who should be playing better and will eventually be playing better.
For sure. And then finally, the last team we're going to talk about is the Atlanta Braves. They're currently not in the playoff picture.
That's surprising.
Right. But I still think they're a contender. They have the best roster, in my opinion, in the NL East. They still have, they have Ronald Acuna, Ozzie Albies, Dansby Swanson. They're going to add some pieces at the deadline.
That's my favorite name in Major League Baseball, by the way.
Ozzie Albies? Dansby Swanson. That team is chock full of good names. Ronald Acuna, Ozzie Albies. And then, Freddie Freeman, obviously, there as well. This roster's absolutely stacked. They had to play a majority of the first month of the season without Max Fried. He is back. And then the NL East just in general is a mess. So, they could have another bad, they could finish out the month of May and be bad. Because normally you try to gauge your team at Memorial Day because you've had 2 months. You kind of know what you have by that point. I think they could still be under 500 at Memorial Day and still have a pretty good shot to make it just because, nobody in the NL East is really taking control. Everybody's just kind of beating up on each other at the moment. So I still have a lot of faith in the Braves to still get it done and potentially win that division just because it's anybody's race at this point.
Look, I'm going to say the Braves are contenders as well. They have the roster built to be a contender. Like you said, the NL East is a dumpster fire almost. They just can't figure it. Each team can't figure it out. But I feel like the Braves will eventually. They're getting healthier. And also, you got to look at the beginning of the season. There was quite a distraction placed on their shoulders by Major League Baseball, with Major League Baseball pulling the All-Star game from Atlanta. And there was a lot of unnecessary, unwanted attention and negativity thrown towards that team, which is it's a distraction nonetheless. And I think now we're getting removed from that, and they can finally get back to just focusing on playing baseball and not have to answer all those questions that are being fired at them about their city losing the All-Star game over something that's completely out of their control. And so yeah, I think now they can get back to business, and that you're going to start seeing them turn that page.
The biggest problem I have with the whole moving the All-Star game out of Atlanta situation is the fact that, okay, so you take it out of Atlanta, so Atlanta loses their All-Star bid, and you give it to the Colorado Rockies when you had the Dodgers last year, who were going to have the All-Star game, didn't because of COVID. You had an easy fix there to just be like, all right, well, we're going to give it to...
But I think the COVID restrictions in California are a lot higher.
Maybe.
I don't think they could have had as full of a stadium at Dodger Stadium than they would have had out in Colorado.
Maybe, but I just was like, man, I mean, I guess that makes the most sense of anything else, but I was just like, really? We're going to have it in Colorado when when you could have just given it back to the Dodgers and said, hey, we know that...
Can you imagine how fun the home run derby is going to be in Colorado?
Oh, yeah, that's going to be...
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, especially if you get, like, I don't know if Vlad Jr. will be in it again, but, like, have, like, Pete Alonso, those names, Kyle Schwarber, those, like, big bats that we're kind of used to seeing. I mean, it's going to be a lot of fun. That was definitely the first thought on my mind when it moved to Colorado. I was like, man, the home run derby is going to be absolutely nuts. I don't know if the Rockies have had a All-Star game before now.
I don't think so. That I can remember.
So yeah, so the home run derby is going to be very exciting. I'm very excited for that.
Yeah. So, like I said, unwanted distraction for them. It's in the past. They can move forward now and just focus on baseball, and they're healthy. I think they're definitely contenders.
Absolutely. Well, that will do it for this week's edition of the Crash Course Podcast. Guys, I'm a moron. I did not mention this is episode 150, B. Scott. This
150.
This is our 150, roughly 150.
Roughly, because from when you started counting.
An asterisk. Because, okay, so basically here's the story. I do intend on going back. I may actually title this technically 150. Like, instead of, normally I have it in parentheses, or I have it, 150 and then a little, like, dash and then say what we talked about. But I may put, like, a little, like, asterisk. I don't know if I can do that in YouTube titles. We'll see. I'll fool around with it a little bit. Obviously, if you're watching this on YouTube, you already know what the title is. Or you're watching it on, or you're listening to it on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. But, so basically what I did last year, I was like, I went episode 1, episode 2, episode 3, episode 4. I started titling everything that way. And so we ended up, I think, with 40-some. I think we ended up with 40-some episodes. And that was season 3. We're on season 4 now. So I was like, okay, we had 39, 40 episodes. So multiply that by 3, then we got where we got now. So I was like, all right, cool. We're at episode... so by my rough estimation, we are at episode 150, and I'm good with.
Look how far we've come. We've come from us being on you recording me on your computer from your phone,
right? So basically, what I would do is I would call you. I would set the phone down, the speaker closest to the microphone. So I would put speaker as close to the microphone as I could get it, and then I would tilt it down to get hopefully the best reception, and then I would lean over and talk into the microphone when it was when we would go back and forth, and edit it that night, put it up. It was on SoundCloud at the time. Really getting back to our original Crash Course days, so we would put it on SoundCloud, and then we put it on Apple Podcasts. Then we made the switch to Anchor. And then, the rest is kind of history. Now we record it, we stream it, we have the video version as well. Come a long way in 150 episodes.
Yeah, we have. And can't wait to see where we're at 150 from now.
Yeah, exactly. We'll have to do something special for, 200 will be here before you know it. So I mean,
I know.
We'll have to figure out something for that.
Actually, 200 should be roughly a year from now.
Yeah, true. So we'll be
roughly.
Yeah.
Maybe probably in the middle of next summer because we do take weeks off here and there. And...
Yeah. So, but yeah, that will do it for this week's episode. Thank you guys for 150 and supporting us through this whole trek that we've had. You know, we started it. Our first episode, I think, was following the 2018 National Championship with Alabama and Georgia. And then we've gone on for that. Our first few episodes, we're talking about if the Colts should draft Saquon Barkley over Quentin Nelson. And we had the whole...
Goodness, they drafted Quentin.
Right, exactly. And we all know how that's all panned out.
Saquon Barkley's been a bad football player. By any still, he hasn't been. It's Quentin Nelson.
No, I was all in Team Saquon, and then definitely
I was all in on Nelson.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I was all about that flash. I was like, hey, I'm a Colts fan that's used to drafting the Joseph Adai's of the world, the Dallas Clarks of the world. Not used to.
We got that flash now, though. We
right.
got that flash, baby, with Jonathan Taylor.
Exactly. So, we've come a long way on the Crash Course podcast. So, again, thank you guys all for all your support. Make sure that you follow us at Crash Course FM on Twitter. Like us on Facebook, Crash Course Podcast. Go over to 3C Media on YouTube so you can subscribe. You can see the MCT podcast every week as well as the video version of our podcast. Like I said, last week's episode is number 1. So thank you guys all for your support. I'm very excited about that. And then remember, you can watch us live at twitch.tv/3C Media. And remember, you can listen on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, wherever podcasts can be heard. You can hear the Crash Course podcast. B. Scott, where can they find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Brandon_Scott87.
All right, well, next week we'll be talking about the results of qualifying for the Indy 500. We'll be getting into some NBA playoffs as well. It's going to be a lot of fun. Can't wait.
Oh, and we're making our picks for the 500.
Yeah, Indy 500 selections. It's that time of year, so very excited for that. Hope you guys will join us, but until then, have a good week, everybody.